My mum wants us to split up. Okay, if you can give her a baby, go ahead. But I'm pregnant right now. Hi, my name is Anna and I'm a mom in my 30s. My husband, who gets paid a salary, and I live together. I worked at a company that dealt with food when I met my husband. I asked him to go on a date because I liked the way he would smile at me sometimes when we were talking about work. Sorry, I'm happy, but I have a girlfriend, he said when I asked him to go on a date. His words, I broke up with her, can we start dating? Were different the next month. He seems to be more aware of me now that I told him the truth, and his woman asks him, Are you into someone else? Because she thinks his behavior is off. As soon as he said yes, she suggested that they break up, and he agreed. It wouldn't have lasted anyway, don't worry. He told me with a smile when I told him about it. After going out together for 3 years, we got married. He told me at that time, I want to have kids after we get married. Could you stay at home and take care of our kids and me? At that time, I didn't want to keep working at that company because it was taking advantage of me. For that reason, my husband told me to quit my job and stay at home with the kids. I chose to stand by my husband. To my surprise, the change from working as an employee to being a full-time mother was very hard and confusing. It didn't worry me, though, because life after getting married was easy, and I was always very happy. I loved every day, and not having to deal with my in-laws was a big deal for me. It takes me 10 minutes to walk to my husband's parents' house from our flat. When I learned this, I thought they might come over often and bother me. But that fear wasn't real. They were very nice, and they would come all the way to our house to teach me in a good way. They never told me they were sorry they couldn't have a baby soon, even when I just had a question. They would even tell me, I love you more than any grandchild. A daughter has always been on my list of things I want because our house is made up of only guys and me. From now on, please let me love you like a real daughter. I looked up to my father-in-law, who didn't say much but was always there, and my mother-in-law for that. But that kind of kindness only lasted for a few years. Little by little, my in-laws' views changed over the years. The silence around my in-laws grew, and my mother-in-law changed so much that I started to wonder if she had 2 different selves. This could be the real mother-in-law, though. Would it be clear if I said she went from +100 to -100 to show how much she changed? My mother-in-law was being really mean to me at this point. She often stopped by our house because she lived close, and when my husband isn't there, she nags at me over and over. I want to have a child soon, but she keeps telling me, I want to see my grandchild already, and that's your duty as a wife. She told me not long ago that children are gifts from God and that they will come naturally when the time is right, so don't rush. My mother-in-law also talks about other families and says things like, I heard the family next door just had a baby and the lady next door is pregnant too. This has made things even worse for me. But if my husband doesn't want to have a child, it doesn't matter how much my mother-in-law wants me to. Even though my husband said he wanted kids when we first got married, he didn't seem to care about them at all about a year later. He would never start a conversation with me. He would say something like, I'm tired, let's do it another day. Or, You're bothering me, I'm trying to play my game. When I tell my mother-in-law this, she doesn't seem to understand or care, and she keeps pushing me to have a child, which makes me more and more stressed out every day. When my mother-in-law keeps bugging me, it's too much for me, so I tell my husband how hard it's been feeling like I have to have kids. When I asked my husband what he thought, he said, I don't see the need to rush, but I agreed to make more effort to have a child together. It took a long time, but I never got pregnant, no matter how hard we tried. My mother-in-law kept telling me I wasn't trying hard enough the whole time, and she even tried to keep my husband from being blamed. I even began to think that my mother-in-law's stress was making it harder for me to get pregnant. My mother-in-law was putting too much pressure on my husband and me, so we finally chose to get fertility treatments. Once I was finally able to breathe easy, something new happened with my husband that made me worry. He has been cold towards me ever since we started fertility treatment. When he gets home from work, he goes straight to his room to play computer games. When I try to talk to him, he often doesn't answer. That would have been bad enough on its own, but things got even worse when he got mad that I spent a little money on sewing supplies for my hobby. When things were tough at work, he'd vent his anger at me. When I tried to fight back, he quickly lost it and screamed at me. "Who do you think is taking care of you?" Over and over again. "You're just a freeloader." And keep being rude to others. I keep telling him that I quit my job because you told me to, but he doesn't seem to care. Along with all the chaos going on, my husband was playing video games at home one day when he should have been at work. I asked him, "Aren't you going to work?" And he said, "I quit." It looks like my husband quit his job without telling me first. I was shocked when I asked him why he quit. He said, "Get out of my business," and got very angry. Because he wouldn't cooperate, I had no choice but to accept that what was done was done. I didn't worry about our money because I thought we could get by with unemployment payments and our savings. But things got stressed when I saw that my husband wasn't interested in looking for another job. Since he lost his job, my husband began spending the whole day at home. He liked to play video games, so I wish he would go out more. He only went to the nearby convenience store once in a while to buy smokes. Other than that, he spent the whole day at home playing video games. The amount of time we spent together went up a lot compared to when he had a job. If this happened when we were just starting to date, I might have thought it was good because it meant we had more time to get close. But no longer. Like my mother-in-law, the amount of time I spent with my husband went from being a plus 100 to a minus 100, which led to more fights in our marriage. Over time, we realized that just talking to each other was making us stressed, so we talked less and less. I began to think, why keep going with this marriage? I began to sense the limits of our present way of life and began to consider ways to depart from it. When my husband kept playing video games at home, I finally lost it and told him, "You're not a child, stop playing games all the time and get a job already." "By the way," my husband replied, "my mom told me to get a divorce from you if you can't give her a grandchild." I was thankful for my mother-in-law at that moment. I had no idea she would help me in this way. It's funny because I was pregnant at the time. I had tested it earlier that day and found it to be true. I was going to tell everyone that night. I guess it was the right thing to do not to do that. In this way, I could stay away from both my husband and my mother-in-law. "Okay, got it," I replied. He said, "Here are the divorce papers." I took them out of my drawer and gave them to him already filled out. My husband didn't think I would agree to a divorce, let alone bring out the filled-out divorce papers. He was shocked and blurted out, "What?" His normal condescending tone wasn't there at all. He had no idea what to do. He looked like he wanted to say something, but he was so sure that he should do what his mom told him that he signed the divorce papers right away. During the whole thing, he kept looking at me to see how I felt. We decided to meet later to talk about things like how to divide our assets after we signed the divorce papers. But we didn't have many things to worry about. People knew that my husband spent a lot of money on his interests. Even though he played games at home, he seemed to have spent a lot of money at arcades. He always said bad things about how much I spent, but he was the one who was careless with money. He had never heard of the idea of saving. My husband kept spending money even after we got married. He hadn't saved any since he was single. So, during our marriage, we had not built up any savings or investments. When I saw that we didn't have any property to split, I thought that we were done talking. But my husband argued that we weren't done yet. He pointed to a bank book and asked, "We still have our savings, right?" In fact, that account had a lot of savings, and my husband recommended that we split it up. But that bank account was not owned by both people. "This is the money I saved before we got married, so it doesn't count in the property division," I said. When my husband heard this, his face quickly turned pale. Still, he blurted out, "Oh, right, this condo should be part of the property division, right? I mean, I did live here too." I told them the hard truth with a mean smile. "Because the house is in my name, you don't have the right to it. You can't live here anymore because I already put it up for sale." To escape any trouble, you should move out as soon as possible. I told him I had been putting money away for a bigger house because I thought the unit would get too small over time. Before I married my husband, I liked saving money, and even though I was still getting paid a salary, I had saved a lot of money. I had saved enough money to buy this house when I was single, so I did have some money. I could even build a nice house downtown with the money I get from selling the condo. Of course, all of those things were mine before I got married and were not part of this property split. My husband doesn't seem to know this, though. He must have thought he would get half of my property, but bad luck for him. When my husband found out that he wouldn't be getting any of the land, he was shocked. We talked some more, but he still looked like he was asleep. The conversation finished quickly because there was nothing else to talk about. After that, we gave the divorce papers to the right people. There was no trouble with finalizing our split. I moved back in with my parents a few months later, and had a safe baby birth with their help. I named him Richard, which is a strong name with desire, because he was a healthy boy. Now I spend every day of my life being happy with my parents and child. I haven't told my ex-husband, of course. If he knew, I'm sure my ex-wife's mother would come in and demand, "Give me my grandchild!" At the same time, my ex-husband went back to his parents' house after being kicked out of the condo. But it seems that he was so shocked by how quickly they accepted our split that he stopped talking to anyone. People say that even though he doesn't go out very often, the cops often stop and question him because of how he looks. What a poor guy. Later, I found out that my ex-husband quit his job because of problems with coworkers. It seems that he was even rude at work, and his female coworkers didn't like him very much. In the end, no one paid attention to him. He quit his job all of a sudden one day because he couldn't stand it anymore. He was only nice to me, but maybe he's always been this way. What a wolf dressed as a sheep. Now, 3 years later, I'm the manager of a craft shop. The owner of a nearby craft shop came up to me when I started going there often. I am getting old and am thinking about quitting my job. She asked Anna, "If it's okay with you, could you take over the store?" I had a lot of free time at that time because my parents were very helpful with childcare. I was thinking about getting a new job, and this shop would close if I didn't. That would make things hard for a lot of usual customers. With these ideas in mind, I chose to take over the store. Today, while I was helping some normal customers, 2 extra guests showed up out of the blue. Yes, that was my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law who showed up out of the blue. "Well, this is quite a nice shop for you, isn't it?" "Sure, Mom, look, this fabric seems like it would suit you." I got tired of their brazen compliments and asked, "So what brings you here then?" "Give me my grandchild back," says my ex-mother-in-law in a way I can't understand. She must have learned in some way that I had given birth and planned to make my child the heir to their family home. "I told you about the divorce when you were already pregnant. Why did you not say anything?" "I wouldn't have divorced you if I knew," my ex-husband began to say. It was clear that I wanted the breakup. I told my ex-husband and ex-mother-in-law, "If you knew I was pregnant, you would have done anything to stop the divorce." Then my ex-wife's mother starts babbling again. "So, are you going to give me back my grandchild or not?" "I need to move in with my grandson right away." "You're done with him. You've been together for 3 years. Give him to me now." As I was shocked, my parents and my son Richard walked in and asked, "What's going on? Is something wrong?" It looks like a normal customer told them about it, and they rushed over. Then, when my ex-mother-in-law saw Richard holding hands with my parents, she said, "Oh, how cute! He looks exactly like my son did when he was little. Look, it's your grandmother." She tried to talk to Richard. It turned out I didn't need to stop her. "I only have one grandma," Richard said as he clung to my mum. In light of the situation, my mother told my ex-mother-in-law, "Maybe it's best you leave." My ex-husband took Richard from my parents and said, "Don't worry about that. Just hand over the kid." I stood in front of my ex-husband to protect Richard, but because I wasn't very big, I was quickly pushed aside. "Richard, watch out!" My ex-husband could barely get a grip on Richard's arm with a few inches to spare. After that, my ex-husband took off into the sky. When I looked up, I saw my dad having just done a great over-the-shoulder throw. Yes, my dad threw out my ex-husband right before the wedding. It turned out that my dad was a police officer. He was also a very good judo player and had participated in national championships when he was in college. My ex-husband, who didn't know this, was in so much pain that he couldn't say a word and could only look at my dad with a sad face. Well then, if you want to cause more trouble for my kids or grandkids, we might have to call the police. What are you going to do? My dad asked while showing my ex-mom-in-law his police badge. When my ex-mother-in-law saw this, she got angry and grabbed my ex-husband's hand, running away. That was a long time ago, and I haven't heard from my ex-husband or mother-in-law since. Of course, I don't want to know. A few years later, Richard started to want to become a police officer because of my dad. He used to say, "When I grow up, I'm going to be a cop too, and I'll protect you too." He is now studying hard to become a police officer. He now practices judo with my dad's help, and I've heard he's the best of his friends. For my part, I will keep watching over my beloved son as he grows.